Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Presenting a united front to tackle California's homelessness crisis. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The mayors of California's largest cities are asking Governor Gavin Newsom for more consistent funding for homelessness. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has the story.
For the past 6 years, California has offered grants to local governments to help homeless people get off the streets and into housing. The funds pay for things like shelters and outreach workers, but the funding isn't permanent. Each year, it's subject to state budget negotiations. Mayor Todd Gloria says that makes it hard for cities to develop consistent spending plans.
We can make meaningful progress on homelessness, but we need the resources to scale our programs and projects for lasting impact. And that's why we need this funding to be made ongoing.
A recent state audit found San Diego could improve how it tracks and reports spending on homelessness. Gloria says he welcomes more accountability.
If the state finds local agencies are sitting on funding or not spending it wisely, then they shouldn't get that funding anymore. Plain and simple. Our cities are spending local and state funding on programs and facilities that get people off the streets, into shelter, and into housing, ending their homelessness.
The governor and lawmakers have to close a budget deficit estimated at $73 billion. The group of big city mayors wants at least $1 billion in homelessness funding in the state budget, which the legislature has to adopt by mid-June. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Thousands of victims of the January flooding have been approved for federal assistance through FEMA. KPBS reporter Melissa May gives us the breakdown of the agency's aid to San Diego residents.
3 months after the January flooding and 2 months since the presidential major disaster declaration, FEMA has released a snapshot of the help it's provided over 60 days. Gerard Hammink with FEMA says to date, the agency has received more than 7,000 applications.
It's really hard to compare disaster to disaster, but if you just look at that number, you can just really see the need that was out there.
Currently, more than 2,898 households have been approved for FEMA grants and over $22 million in federal assistance approved, including $18.3 million in housing grants, covering home repairs and rental assistance.
There were about $9 million in grants for those essential, critical home repairs. And then there's another about $9 million in temporary rental assistance.
And almost $3.9 million approved for other essential needs, including medical expenses and lost personal possessions.
If someone, needed their car and didn't, to get to work, just to function, we have done grants to help them replace that.
Hammink says most of the grant money has already been distributed to the victims.
The dispersed amount only trails the approved amount by maybe a couple $1,000s. Really, it's 95 to 99% of all the approved money has been sent out to people, generally direct deposit.
Homeowners and renters can also apply for Small Business Administration loans, but these are loans, not grants, and need to be paid back in 30 years. To help streamline the application process, both FEMA disaster recovery centers in Mountain View and Spring Valley have been converted to SBA disaster loan outreach centers. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Over the course of the next couple of days, we will be talking about the continuation of some low clouds at the coast, perhaps even some misty conditions. Even a shower cannot be ruled out. Noted with that will be a cooling trend, not only for our coastal communities, but throughout the interior valleys and into the mountains and even the deserts. And some more changes are coming up as we venture our way down the road into the upcoming weekend. I'll talk about those changes coming up.
Earlier this month, the City Commission recommended moving a stretch of Carlsbad Boulevard to higher ground because of climate change. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen says the Carlsbad City Council is set to review those recommendations this evening.
Scenic Carlsbad Boulevard abuts the coast. It's a beautiful drive where you can see pelicans flying by and gliding past surfers.
I mean, is it beautiful or is it beautiful?
But the road, also known as Highway 101, is being threatened by climate change and erosion. In some places, the pavement is only a few feet from the bluff. According to a city report, this stretch of Carlsbad Boulevard is susceptible to damage from sea level rise.
And the beach is going to continue to erode.
The city's Beach Prevention Commission earlier this month recommended moving this 1 mile stretch of Carlsbad Boulevard to higher ground, retreating from the sea. The commission is presenting the plan to the city council this evening. Mitch Silverstein with the Surfrider Foundation agrees with the commission. He thinks the council should act sooner rather than later.
We want the city council to support the idea that when they realign traffic from this road, which you can see is too close to the beach, to the northbound road, we want the city to support demolishing this old road so that they can restore the beach and the adjacent wetlands.
At its lowest point, Carlsbad Boulevard is only a few feet above the beach. As you can see right now, it's high tide and the waves are almost hitting the street. But during king tide or a severe winter storm, it actually can flood the road. The city has been putting boulders by the road to prevent erosion, but that's not a long-term solution.
It's not really a question of if, it's a question of when we move this infrastructure back to protect the road and protect this critical corridor, and then how we do that.
The other option would be a phased approach where changes would take place incrementally over a 96-year period. Silverstein doesn't think that's a good idea.
If they're able to demolish the road at the same time as they reroute traffic, we can create a resilient beach that will be there with up to 6 feet of sea level rise.
A city spokesperson says the city only received grant funding to do the study, and the presentation today is the end product. The city council isn't expected to take any immediate action. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
More colleges across the U.S. woke up to major pro-Palestine protests on their campuses today. There are rising concerns about student safety. But as Laura Aguirre shows us, students' views about the war in Gaza may be more aligned than headlines may suggest.
Communal.
About some matzo ball soup.
Complex. And now, coast to coast. Pro-Palestinian protests demanding an end to the war in Gaza taking root on college campuses across the U.S.
A lot of people have been galvanized and inspired to join us.
Pro-Palestinian supporters have condemned university crackdowns on their demonstrations and free speech. Meanwhile, escalating anti-Semitic incidents have left many students, mostly Jewish, fearing for their safety. Still, Jewish students at Columbia hosted a Passover Seder Monday evening for everyone, regardless of faith or political views.
On Passover, it's important to stand up for oppressed people everywhere, whether they're Jewish or not.
There remains a keen awareness of potential violence, and the NYPD says it has received several reports of harassment. They've also made over 100 arrests since last week for criminal trespassing, as have other law enforcement agencies at campus protests in their cities this week.
Many of my colleagues are calling for these university presidents across the country step up and provide a safe space for all students.
Columbia has now canceled in-person classes on its main campus for the rest of this semester. But some students say one of the most important lessons being learned is unfolding right now.
It's so important to us to transcend the barriers of race, class, ethnicity, religion, and there's a lot of joy here. I think really for the first time on campus in months.
I'm Laura Aguirre for KPBS News.
And classes are also being canceled at other schools, including California Polytechnic State University's Humboldt campus and the University of Minnesota. The White House says President Biden is monitoring the protests across the U.S., but won't say if he believes New York officials should deploy the National Guard to restore order there. They add that the president does condemn what he calls alarming rhetoric at some of the demonstrations.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, hundreds are arrested as more pro-Palestinian protests spread across college campuses. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Democrats hope abortion rights will motivate moderate voters in key states this fall, especially women. President Biden campaigned in Florida today, 1 week before one of the strictest abortion laws in the country takes effect in the state. Karen Kafa reports.
President Joe Biden underscoring how his party hopes to put Florida back in play this fall.
It should be a constitutional right in the federal Constitution, a federal right. And it shouldn't matter where in America you live. This isn't about states' rights, it's about women's rights.
Biden focused on reproductive rights in Tampa as a law banning most abortions after 6 weeks in the state of Florida is set to take effect next Wednesday, May 1st. Democrats hope the ban, coupled with a ballot question in November seeking to enshrine abortion access in the state's constitution, can motivate moderate voters and women this fall.
But I think starting in Tampa today on this message of abortion, in light of what happened in Arizona and other places, I think is a good strategy.
While Trump has said abortion policy should be left to the states, he's also said some states have taken it too far, including Arizona, where the state Supreme Court recently ruled that a 160-year-old near total abortion ban can be enforced. Some Republicans not overly concerned about Florida, which Trump won in 2016 and 2020, or Biden's visit while Trump sits in a New York courtroom for his hush money criminal trial.
I think a tactical move on the Biden administration's part to go to Florida while former President Trump's on trial here to come and make the point that he can't be there to defend his home turf.
The Biden campaign seeking to tie restrictive abortion laws in Florida, Arizona, and other states to Trump's nomination of 3 conservative Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe v. Wade in a 2022 decision. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Tik Tok is threatening legal action if the U.S. bans the social media platform. The Senate is expected to pass the legislation as early as tomorrow. Proponents of the ban cite national security concerns, but legal experts say Tik Tok could argue the ban would hurt free speech. Christy Baer in Pacific Beach told our media partner KGTV that she works full-time helping companies advertise on social media. She also uses Tik Tok herself as an extra source of income.
What's really amazing is that these social platforms allow, like your everyday person to start a business online, grow a community, and be able to sell products. I would be upset if it went away because currently it is like my largest platform that I have.
And President Biden has signaled that he would sign the bill should it pass in the Senate. The bill also includes aid for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine. The California Bicycle Summit took place in San Diego last week, and the opening speaker was Jeanie Ward-Waller. The former Caltrans executive was fired last year after blowing the whistle on a freeway expansion project outside Sacramento. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen spoke with Ward-Waller on her firing and what it says about the state's commitment to climate action.
Over the past 6 months, Jeanie Ward-Waller has become something of a celebrity in the small world of California transportation politics. Last summer, she began speaking up to her superiors at Caltrans about the planned widening of Interstate 80. She suspected Caltrans was being dishonest about the project's future impacts on air pollution and climate change, which the agency denies. She even called for an outside audit to assess whether Caltrans was breaking the law. Shortly thereafter, she was fired. Ward-Waller says there are good people working at Caltrans, but that the agency's leadership often has a mindless impulse to widen freeways.
There's still a long way to go for Caltrans to really shift away from feeling like driving is the only option and the only solution is continuing to expand our freeways, to focusing on providing alternatives for people so they have safer and more sustainable ways to get around their communities.
California has set a goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. That means in about 20 years, every molecule of carbon dioxide that Californians put into the atmosphere would somehow have to be recaptured and returned to the earth. Ward-Waller says it's a good goal. It's based on what scientists say is necessary to avoid climate catastrophe, but she acknowledges it's going to be hard.
The solutions are many, are varied. They include things like building more affordable housing in existing communities so people can live close to where they work, live, in neighborhoods where there's already infrastructure, like things like sidewalks, public transit. The more we build new communities farther away, the more we're working against those goals. But certainly how we invest in our transportation infrastructure has a lot of influence on how those development patterns happen and change. The more we are expanding freeways, the more we're making it easier for people to drive farther, to afford homes farther away from those existing communities. So that's really working against our goals of getting to net zero carbon emissions.
I point out to Ward Waller that while Californians care about climate change, economic issues like inflation and the cost of housing are usually higher priorities. She says all these things are connected.
Well, California is already being impacted, every day, every year we see worse and worse disasters like wildfires, like, sea level rise, major storms, drought. Those impacts are worsening because of climate change every year. So these things do impact people's everyday lives. And I think they most impact the communities that kind of have the least resources to do anything about it. So the communities that are already divided by freeways, already most impacted by air pollution from freeways. Those are going to be the communities that are most impacted by things like severe heat as well and the effects of climate change. So we all need to be engaged in changing the system and changing how we get around and ensuring that our governments are providing better options to get around to make sure that those who are most burdened today do not continue to be the most burdened in the future.
Ward Waller adds the transition away from a car-centric society is a pocketbook issue. Most people have to own a car just to participate in the economy. And like almost everything these days, car ownership is getting more expensive.
I mean, the amount of money that goes towards our gas taxes to then maintain the system that we all rely on, even if you mostly drive and you can get everywhere in a car easily today, you know that the system is not well maintained. You care about things like filling potholes, keeping the system that you rely on for driving in a state of good repair. And so that is a kind of pocketbook issue that affects people every day. The more we expand that system, the less we have the ability to maintain what we have. And that's going to impact everyone. And it certainly impacts, how we spend our taxpayer dollars.
Jeanie Ward Waller filed a claim of whistleblower retaliation against Caltrans for her firing. That legal claim is still pending. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Now, with the onshore flow, clouds will be thickening again later on tonight. Temperatures dropping down into the mid-50s, though there will be a little bit of a difference depending on where you are as we look north toward Oceanside, 54 degrees. Ramona, some of the interior valleys dropping down into the 40s, as we'll also see over the mountainous terrain toward Mount Laguna. Borrego Springs dropping down to 55. Here's a look at future radar and satellite. And again, as we work our way through time here, again, we'll notice again that we will be talking about, again, those low clouds hanging out here as we venture our way, again, through time into Wednesday and also in toward Thursday. Further on down the road, perhaps some larger scale changes coming in. We'll have more on that coming up here in just a moment. But some low cloudiness here along the coastline. Can't even see a little bit of mist out there to start things off. Ramona climbs to 66 degrees, 51 Mount Laguna, mid-80s toward Borrego Springs. And again, here's the overall outlook as we work our way again throughout your Wednesday. It's going to be quite warm over the far interior, but again, a little bit cooler here along the immediate coastline. Some of the interior valleys still looking nice. And as we work our way into Thursday, again, high pressure building in, but also notice the onshore flow coming back into place. So that'll keep the clouds around. And the overall pattern here later on in the week does favor some cooler air. Most of the moisture will stay off toward our north, though, especially as we work your way into northern California and also into areas of Oregon and Washington State. But like I said, can't rule out a possible sprinkle or shower here the next couple of mornings over the coast. Otherwise, we start to see a turnaround for the weekend with some sunshine and some milder air. Interior valleys, low cloud sprinkles into Thursday, gradually warming up here later on this weekend. We'll see a similar tendency here toward the mountainous locations along with some wet weather and wind on Friday. A slower turnaround toward the upcoming weekend. And for the deserts, a big change with the temperature by Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Climate change is literally making the world poorer. That is according to a new study which shows a 19% reduction in global income over the next couple of decades. As Ivan Rodriguez reports, it won't just impact governments or big corporations.
Troubling results from a new study published in Nature, saying there is no way to avoid short-term financial pain even if governments ramp up their efforts to tackle the climate crisis now.
The last 7 complete years, the United States has really broken so many different records in terms of weather and climate extremes, with the cost in excess of $1.1 trillion.
The damage to people's homes, the increased cost to grow and transport food, and mental health tolls will be a hit on the economy, close to 19% by 2050. In some instances, those who are contributing to the problem the least will suffer the most.
It's kind of luck of geography in a lot of this, or lack of luck.
The Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia are the regions most likely to see income reductions based on the report.
In some ways, the effects of climate change will likely be larger there, both because of the higher vulnerability in many of these regions, but also because, frankly, they represent gargantuan departures from the conditions that these places are typically used to.
The U.S., a historically large polluter, will see a smaller impact than neighboring countries, but it won't be spared from the effects of a warming planet, especially younger generations.
Disasters, some of which are greatly amplified by climate change, can put the squeeze on housing supplies, making it less affordable.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
Over the lifetime of a baby born this year, food prices are also seen rising by an estimated $33,000 because of disruptions to agriculture and supply chains, according to the report. Food deserts are low-income urban areas where fresh, quality food is not easy to find. A group of academics and community leaders are now attacking the problem in San Diego by reimagining the local food industry. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge explains.
This part of San Diego near Imperial Avenue is considered a food desert. You're not likely to find full-service supermarkets nearby. You are likely to find dollar stores and convenience stores that sell processed food. But in this same neighborhood is a garden that's devoted to food education and social action. It's run by a community nonprofit called Global Action Research Center, or Global ARC.
One of the things that we've done over the last year, they've interviewed many existing restaurants and businesses, caterers, food trucks, so that are already in existence, to try to find out what kinds of information did they need when they first got started, and also what do they need now.
Watson, the president of Global ARC, talks about a tool he thinks will help people succeed in the food business in places like Lincoln Park. It's an app with access to huge databases that can map out a business idea. It's being created under a program called Nourish, a partnership between universities and community groups like Global ARC. The principal investigator of the project is Laura Schmidt of UC San Francisco. She says they are not trying to convince stores like Ralph's or Vons to move into the neighborhood.
What we're doing at Nourish is trying to think about alternative models where we could stimulate small business development with local business owners in these communities. In low-income communities in America, you have a lot of recent immigrants and people who are really entrepreneurial.
And one thing a lot of them know how to make and procure is food. In order to create a computer model that could lead them in the right direction, Nourish went to the UC San Diego Supercomputer Center.
I consider conversation as data.
Amarnath Gupta has also talked to a lot of would-be entrepreneurs and has formed a partnership with the Small Business Administration. The computer scientist is working to create an app infused with artificial intelligence. It can consult with an aspiring business person through their smartphone or their laptop and give them the information they need. He says information about food markets, supply lines, foot traffic, and business licensing is out there, but it's very hard for aspiring entrepreneurs to find.
If you keep adding the conditions needed for her to actually start a business, you'll find that there is no one information source to which she can go and get all of this. It's all disparate, it's all unconnected, and the veracity of that information that she gets from the web is a problem.
The app is meant to work in tandem with a human small business consultant. Gupta demonstrates on a model platform.
It consults the knowledge base and gives you this. Gives you some statistics, as you can see. In a 2022 report,
Nourish will test the system in 2 local food deserts, one in the city of San Diego and another in a rural setting in Imperial County. Paul Watson says the mission of his group, Global Arc, is not just making quality food available in food deserts, it's social change.
And so part of what we look at Nourish is the ability to have local entrepreneurs that can hire people within their own communities that could really begin to get these businesses thriving and growing so that we can keep that money flowing within our communities and not extracting it like the big box corporations do.
That's how he imagines the food business should work and maybe solve the problem of food deserts. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Tesla is known as one of the world's leading electric car companies, but sales are down. NPR's Morning Edition will report on what it means for the EV industry. And KPBS Midday Edition talks with the Haitian Bridge Alliance to see how they're working with asylum seekers in San Diego. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.